Why am I standing on a pile of slate in the middle of a Welsh quarry? Well, that's a good question, but it's because of this. It's one of my absolute favourite pieces of camera gear and I want to talk to you about it today. To give it its full name, it's the Linhof PC612 Technorama, or the Linhof 612 to you and I. It's an absolute beast of a camera. It was made in West Germany, at least that's what it says on the back here, which means it predates the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989. Why do I enjoy this camera so much? Well, it's beautifully built, very, very strong. You know that old saying that if something's built really well, it's built like a tank? Well, if a tank's built really well, I'm going to say it's built like a Linhof. It's incredibly robust. It's quite a heavy camera, but it does feel really good in the hands despite the size. It's a separate viewfinder. There's no rangefinder in there. It's easily detachable. You can use this for compositions if you like, but it's incredibly clear with two sets of bright lines for 65mm and 135mm, because those are the two lenses available on this camera. When I was a young man in the 60s and 70s, professional photographers used Rolleiflex and Hasselblad. Sure, the Japanese SLRs were making big roads into the amateur semi-professional market, and lots of people were using them, and of course there was always Leica with a standard 35mm format, but most of the images that I saw as a kid that were in magazines, on posters, wherever you see in the media, was square, usually black and white as well. So I grew up loving the square format. To me, it just seems really natural. Well, this is double square. Well, that's what I call it anyway. So instead of 6x6, we have 6x12. When I look through this viewfinder, the compositions come easy. It's natural. It feels good to me to use. And surely the best bits of equipment are the ones that inspire you and feel good to use. Whilst I'm up here, there's a rather nice composition here, and the sun has finally broken through the cloud, so I need to get this quite quickly. Got a red filter on, shooting f16 and 1/30th of a second on Tri-X 400. Work even better if I leveled it, wouldn't it? There we go. That looks great. As beautifully made as this camera is, it is quite rudimentary. Ultimately, of course, it's just a light type box that we put a lens on the front of. It does, however, have a few nice user-friendly features that make it a little bit easier to get things right. One of which is the dark side. Lives in the back here just as for storage. If I take that out and spin the camera around, hidden underneath the strap here, there's a slot that I can insert this to, put it all the way home. Now I've done that, the lens cavity and the film compartment are completely separated. So there's two quarter turn screws here and I can remove the lens. I could still undo those without the dark side being in place, but the lens wouldn't come off, so that's a nice safety feature. Of course, it does mean that I can change the lens halfway through a roll without exposing the film. Also, it's a pretty good idea to do that when you're changing the film itself and you've got the camera face down on your table or your lap or something like that. It could stop any dust or debris getting onto the back of the lens, which might spoil your day. Good morning and welcome to a second day in Cwmorthin quarry. I hadn't planned on it being a multi-day shoot, but it was about 7 hours from home, including the rest breaks. And then when I got to my original destination, which was the Norwich quarry, it was shut. Yeah, they closed it down for a major feature film. So those Hollywood multi-millionaires have got in the way of my little YouTube review on the Linhof 612. Anyway, blessed with the weather this morning. It's absolutely beautiful, which isn't guaranteed in Snowdonia, and it does give me the opportunity to continue going into the technical details on the camera. When it comes to loading film, the camera is pretty straightforward. A couple of sprung steel plates to hold the film spools in place, a couple of little tensioner rollers there. But before I load the film, I want to point this out. This rubber roller here seems to rotate freely, really important. When the film's in place, it pushes against here with some tension, and that's what drives the film counter right here. And I'll show you we have to align that before we can start using the camera. So we'll do that before the back's on. So take up spool goes into here. You'll notice I've got the dark side in place, and here's one I prepared earlier, a little Delta 100 today. So into that side, onto there. Does anybody miss the Fuji tabs? I hate the way both Kodak and Ilford leave little bits of remnants of paper on there. The Fuji system is much better. Right, feeling a bit cack-handed because obviously I'm filming it. Let's push that in there, winding that across. Now I've got it started, I'm going to put my thumb on here for a little bit of tension, and that's quite important in this camera. And then when I get the arrow to the alignment mark, which is right there, I don't think you can see that from that shot, but it's just here, and you notice I've got tension here on my thumb. I'm then going to take the film counter and align it with the 120 mark with an arrow down here, and you might be able to hear that rubber roller going against the backing paper. Once that's aligned at 120, the camera is now ready to close up. I've made my life a bit difficult by putting this on a tripod so it's easy to film, but who knows, might go on. Straight on, make sure it's no, get it all nicely aligned, there we are. And then tighten it up like that. And that's the film loaded. So now we've got the film loaded, I'm going to wind on until the film counter says 1. Nice and gently, because if you put too much force on it, there's a chance it might slip against the roller, and that could misalign the counter and you could get incorrect frame spacing. Anyway, so there we are at 1, there's a positive stop. This prevents double exposures. They are possible if you want to do them, but this prevents inadvertent double exposures. So we don't have a red window on the back that we have to align a number with from the paper backing. It does it for you here. Now, I can expose the shutter by clicking underneath, but when I press the shutter release down, there's a little cam inside that pushes against a button and then releases the roller and the film counter to wind on to the next one, and I'll show you how it does that. So the dark slide is in place and it's okay to remove the lens. So a little quarter turn on each, lens comes away, and there's the dark slide. I'm hoping you can see that in this little slot here that I'm pointing to, there's a metal button that's spring loaded to go in. I'm not going to activate it just yet. And that is actuated by this cam on the back of the shutter release mechanism here. So when I depress this, I'm hoping you can see that that cam moves down. And when that moves down, that depresses that button and it allows you to wind on to the next frame. So you get a positive stop each time and the prevention of double exposures. Using this composition here, I want to talk about the viewfinder. It just clips in a cold shoe on the top. It does have a level at the side. The bright lines are very good, and they're for the 65mm lens and the 135. So let's just see if we can take a look at those. And they're very good for framing the subject and finding your level. When designing this camera, Linhof made the decision to give the front lens board an 8mm rise. That is, the center axis of the lens is 8mm above the center point in the film frame at the back. It makes sense for what the camera was designed for, mostly panoramics, mostly horizons, but when you want to shoot downhill, it means you'd have to tilt the camera down further, and that can give you a slightly odd perspective. They came up with a solution. It's quite basic. I wouldn't say it was elegant, but it definitely works. There's a threaded plate on the top of the camera, and I've screwed a tripod mounting plate in here, and it's as simple as removing it, turning it upside down, and looking through the viewfinder at the bottom. It looks a bit odd, but it works. These might look like gravestones, but they are in fact gateposts. The ironwork there is where the fencing came off. So the steel lines came off of there. You can still see some of the wire attached. Anyway, this is a pretty cool place and quite a big cottage. Let's see if I can just go up to show you. I'm really trying not to trip over here. And then what looks like to be 3 floors, because there's a fireplace down in the bottom, then 2nd floor, then 3rd floor. Pretty big place. Very cool though. They had a pretty decent view out the front door as well. I'm out here in the long grass, literally, because I want to talk about the 2 lenses that are available for the camera. This is a Mark 1 Linhof 612, and it came, or you could purchase, the 65mm and the 135mm, and that's what the bright lines are for inside the finder. They're both Schneider Kreuzneck. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. I'm sure somebody will tell me if I'm not. They both share the same parameters. That is, the maximum shutter speed is 1/500th, and the aperture range is from f5.6 to f45 on both. Not quite sure why you need f45. I don't think I've ever gone beyond f22, but perhaps somebody could explain that to me. They're custom fitted at the factory to these lens cones. So you can't just buy a lens cone, put your own focusing helicoid on the front and then whack the lens on the front. Well, I suppose you could if you're a skilled technician, but they are custom fitted at the factory. You'll notice on the front of the 65mm filter, wide angle lenses, and 65mm is wide for a 612 camera. Experience light fall off at the edges. So this center ND, as it says on the tin, is slightly darker in the center to hopefully give an even exposure all across the film plane. I'm going to use this composition behind for a demonstration. It's not particularly a good composition. It might look a little bit busy, but it gives a real world comparison, because I don't know about you, when people talk about 65, 135, I've kind of got an idea of what it is. But when we look at equivalent focal lengths for different formats, I kind of need to do a little bit of mental maths, and then I still don't get it. So an example is always better. So that's it from me and my review of the Linhof 612 in Cwmorthin quarry. I hope my passion for this camera has come across and that you now know a little bit more about it. This is an old one from the 80s, but they do still make them new. You can get in contact with the factory. If you happen to be in the UK, the lovely ladies at Linhof Studio can sort you out if you're so interested. Thanks for sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed it.